Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. Of course, as always, I'm your host, Charles Hamaker, here with you. We're in the month of September. You play the song Earth, Wind, and Fire. Our teams continue to roll on. The Seahawks regular season is on the cusp. The Mariners continue into the month of September, a big month of September for them as they not only look to clinch a playoff spot, but also a divisional title as well as within reach. So they still got a lot of work to do on that front. The Storm season wraps up next week, which is crazy. We'll have a ton of stuff once the season ends on that, obviously looking at what Jewel Lloyd decides with her impending free agency. The Sounders continue their season looking to lock up a playoff spot. Which is going to be a mess. We'll get into that. The Kraken made a couple of depth signings, and the rain season continues on. They're in the same boat as the Sounders. They're looking to get their own playoff spot as they continue on in the Challenge Cup playoffs as well. So we will start where we always do with our Seattle Seahawks with two pieces of injury-related news. As we wrapped up the preseason and we've got the 53-man roster, which we'll get to in a second, but some injury notes. Pete Carroll said that safety Jamal Adams will not play in week one. He's not quite ready for that yet. He is in practice with the team, but he is not ready for week one. And cornerback Devin Witherspoon is also unlikely for week one. I didn't get too much clarity further on that, but two parts of the secondary that should be big for the Seahawks throughout this 2023-2024 season, Jamal Adams and Devon, the fifth overall pick in this year's draft. Von Witherspoon not going to play, at least Witherspoon not likely, in week one. We get into the 53-man roster. That was the big announcement of this past week. We talked about it last episode about the cuts and who's going to make it. No real surprises here with the Seahawks 53-man roster. We've got the practice squad. And some other roster moves after the roster was announced. So we'll go through it position group by position group here. Obviously, the two quarterbacks that are currently on the roster, or the 53-man roster, are Geno Smith and Drew Lock. No real surprises there. Again, I know I want to reference that quote from Geno Smith earlier in the offseason when he talked about how he kind of felt bad for Drew Lock because he feels that Drew Lock is a starting caliber quarterback, and instead he's sitting here on the bench in Seattle. But maybe that says something about Drew Lock wanting to continue to get better and work alongside Geno Smith and being involved with the Seahawks team. So at the running back position, again, no real surprises necessarily here. Kenneth Walker III, Zach Charbonnet, DJ Dallas, and Kenny McIntosh. Now, I won't necessarily say that these are for certain the depth chart. For the Seahawks, obviously, Geno Smith's going to start. But especially when we get to running back, DJ Dallas could be as the two over Charbonnet potentially. The current layout makes sense. But especially when we get to wide receiver here, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Derek Young, Cody Thompson, and Jake Bobo. Obviously, no surprise that Bobo made the roster. Who the one is over DK and Tyler, I don't think either of those guys care. It's more about where they're going to line up as the X and the Y receivers. So I don't take for word. This is just how the Seahawks had these things listed. Tight ends, again, no real surprises. Noah Fant, Will Disley, Kobe Parkinson, that group, one of the higher paid in all of football. Offensive line group, I was happy to see Oluwatimi on the top of this group. Phil Haynes, Evan Brown, Damian Lewis, Anthony Bradford, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, Jake Curran, and Stone Forsythe. No real surprises. Again, there's not going to be much of any surprise here with the 53-man roster for the Seahawks. There's a lot of guys. The Seahawks liked their group. And even with guys who didn't make the initial 53-man, Seattle's entire practice squad, before these roster moves that we get to here, were made up entirely of players that they had on the preseason roster. So they really liked the group that they had, and they wanted to keep that together. Defensive line, Draymond Jones, Mike Morris, Miles Adams, Miles Edwards Mario Edwards Jr. I apologize. That's not Miles Edwards. Jerron Reed and Cameron Young. All of the Seahawks draft picks made the roster as well, which is interesting to note. That's not something that really happens that common. Linebacker group. This linebacker group's exciting. Devin Bush, Uchenna Nwosu, Nick Ballore, Daryl Taylor, Boye Mafe, Bobby Wagner. It's great to see him on that list. Jordan Brooks, Derek Hall, John Radigan, and Tyreek Smith. Tyreek Smith, notably one of those big players to watch against the Cowboys in the preseason earlier there. Cornerback wise, Kobe Bryant, Devin Witherspoon. Again, Witherspoon likely not playing in week 1. Trey Brown, who made a name for himself in the preseason, really inserting himself into a pretty stacked defensive back room that's gonna have when I talk about the sort of logjam and depth chart, this is where it's going to get interesting as well. You got Bryant, Witherspoon, Brown. Artie Burns was listed here, but I don't think he was on the 53-man because he was on the practice squad instead. Tariq Woolen, Mike Jackson, safeties, Quandre Diggs, Julian Love. Julian Love is someone that I don't think got talked about enough in the offseason. I think his addition would be big for Seattle. Jarek Reed II, one of the later draft picks that the Seahawks made the roster. Jamal Adams, of course. And then the specialists, Michael Dixon, Jason Myers, and long snapper Chris Stoll will take over that mantle. We get over to the practice squad here. Quarterback Holton Allers was on this. Again, we've got some roster moves to look at here. Outside linebacker Levi Bell, cornerback Lance Boykin, Artie Burns was listed here. Tackle Greg Island, nose tackle Matthew Goddell, center Joey Hunt, wide receiver Kate Johnson, running back Bryant Koback, wide receiver Matt Landers, tight end Taylor Mabry, linebacker Patrick O'Connell, safety Ty Okada, running back Saraderick Thompson, and then wide receiver Aesop Jr. A couple of guys, Aesop Winston Jr., pardon me, Winston, Bell, Kay Johnson, all guys that I thought would be interesting to see if they made the roster and they make the 53-man. And then, of course, they get to these roster moves I'm talking about on the 30th, after the initial cut day. These ones were interesting. The Seahawks claimed 2 people off of waivers, cornerback Caillou Blue Kelly and linebacker Drake Thomas. These are guys that the Raiders for Thomas and the Ravens for Blue Kelly wanted to keep. They hoped that they made rosters, as said by head coaches Harbaugh and McDaniels. They both were hoping that these guys would clear waivers, and they didn't. The Seahawks snapped them up. Carroll said that he liked the intangibles of Blue Kelly. So these are interesting notes here to see guys like that. They were claimed off waivers. The roster moves that were made on the 31st, the team signed John Radigan and offensive guard Ben Brown, in addition to cornerback Robert Rochelle, releasing Allers and Greg Island off of the practice squad. So interesting there. The Seahawks have 2 quarterbacks on the entirety of the roster. It'll be interesting to see if change is made to add another quarterback, but it seems like right now they're fine with 2. Usually the teams will have a third quarterback at some point, but the Seahawks do not as of this current moment. So we finally have a regular season game to look ahead to. Obviously nothing going on this past weekend in terms of Seahawks football, but we do have a game to look forward to. Finally, the season will begin week 1, September 10th versus the LA Rams here at home at Lumen Field with a 1:25 p.m. Pacific time kickoff. It's a big one here. The Rams don't currently know for certain if they'll have Cooper Kupp for this game. Cooper Kupp's been dealing with an injury. I believe he had a setback in this injury, and that's a big loss. I mean, Cooper Kupp has burdened the Seahawks a few times, dealt with some things this past year after having a big year in their Super Bowl winning season. So it'll be really interesting to see if the Rams are able to have Kupp available for this game, because again, this is big for that Rams offense, a Rams roster that has had a lot of turnover the last 2 seasons. So looking for the Seahawks to start out positive with a win against a division rival, kicking off in the NFC West matchup. And we all know how the Rams have been competitive-wise against the Seahawks for years now, even back to the Jeff Fisher era. So that'll be a big one, and the season begins. So exciting for that, and good luck to all of you on your fantasy football seasons. We move over to our Seattle Mariners, and the broom is sitting next to me. but we don't have any sweeps to report, unfortunately. The Mariners finished out that little 6-game homestand hosting the Royals and the Athletics, and then started a 10-game road trip that kicks off the month of September. It's a big road trip against some quality opponents, despite how records look. So we'll get in here first to the Athletics series. August 28th versus the Athletics was a 7-0 win. As we go to our photo of the game here by Sage Zepeto. Big one here. The Mariners pitching staff, obviously a shutout. Great to have. I believe it was a 19th shutout on the season for the Mariners. Excuse me. Our player of the game, center fielder Julio Rodriguez. Julio, 4 hits, 3 runs, and 3 RBIs on the day. At that point in time, Julio, I believe, had 28 hits over the past 10 games, which is just kind of ridiculous to even think about. So that's really interesting. Just kind of the run that he's been on. We continue here. August 29th was a very bizarre day. We'll talk about it here in a minute. We'll go to our photo of the game here by Brian Saldana. The Mariners would lose this one 1-3. Our player of the game, shortstop JP Crawford, 1 hit and 2 walks. So I know we typically keep this for the injury news segment of the show. But something to note here. This was a really odd game. Just like an hour or so before first pitch, it was announced that George Kirby would miss his start due to an illness. He didn't feel good the night before, and the Mariners decided hey, we're just going to skip the start. Luke Weaver, one of the the only long reliever for the Mariners here, would get the spot start. Hung a couple balls, unfortunately, and the Athletics would take advantage. Julio missed this game just minutes before the game because it was his name got announced on Mariners Vision in the starting lineup, and then we found out just a little bit after that in the press box that Julio was not able to go with left foot soreness. He had a nerve issue in that left foot. He would end up missing this game and the next game after that, but he is back and he is in the lineup. And then Ty France left this game against the Athletics with a left wrist contusion. Luke Weaver tried to throw a pickoff attempt at him. It bounced and ended up hitting Ty in that left wrist, and Ty has had issues with his wrist before, so this was a little bit scary. But he would leave that game. We do have another injury update on Ty, but that's for later. But yeah, it was the 29th was very, very bizarre, and we all kind of felt how Dom Kenzone looks in this photo. The Mariners would bounce back to win the series, beating the Athletics 5-4 in the getaway game the next day. Our player of the game, right fielder Teoscar Hernandez. Teo, 1 hit, 1 run, and 3 RBIs, including a 3-run homer in the first half of that game that would tie it up at 3. And then the Mariners, were able to go ahead and win that game, take the series over the Athletics. Athletics have some talent. I'm not saying a ton, but they do have some talent on that roster. So we go from that. The Mariners, they have the getaway game. They fly to New York. They have the day off on Thursday in New York, which was fun to see. It was Taylor Saucedo, Justin Topa, and Gabe Spire, all members of Los Bomberos, went to a New York Fire Department station and took photos in some firefighter gear, which was fun to see. We go over here to the Mets series. This one, not a series win. It's the first time that the Mariners haven't gotten a series win since, I believe, mid-August. I'll get the exact numbers here for you. Just not, I know I looked at this series and you say, hey, they should be able to win this series. The Mets have struggled for the large part of this season. But obviously, each team is going to do their own thing. The Mets didn't make a couple call-ups for some of their younger players, some of their prospects, and they were up for the series in this one. September 1st at the Mets, a 1-2 loss. This one on Friday on Apple TV+. The Mariners unable to do enough on offense. I mean, Logan Gilbert was strong, only allowed the 1 run. Andres Munoz did allow a run, and people were like, oh, this is on Munoz. Your offense can't put up 1 run. That's just simply ridiculous. You can't really expect that to be plausible. Our player of the game, shortstop JP Crawford. JP, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 RBI, and 1 walk on the day. So tough there that the Mariners aren't able to do anything on offense. Just frustrating, but it's going to happen. You can't expect them to have lights out performances every single game. Game 2, the Mariners would win this one 8-7. Once again, JP Crawford, great game, 3 hits, 3 runs, and 1 RBI, including the go-ahead solo homer in the top of the 9th inning. This one all really back and forth. Luis Castillo started this game. He gave up, I believe, 3 homers on the day. Tough one for Luis because otherwise, outside of the 2 innings that he struggled, he was pretty solid, giving the Mariners 6 innings, but just kind of hung some balls that the Mets were able to hit hard. And that was tough. It's tough to see that from your ace, but we move on. You got the win, so it doesn't feel as bad. In the series finale, the Mariners would lose this one 3-6. George Kirby making his first start since that illness where he missed the start against the Athletics. He got hit hard too. Gave up a couple homers. Just really didn't look like a George Kirby outing. And it was a tough one. The Mariners, it was the first time that the Mariners had lost by a 3+ run in 40 games. That streak was snapped. The last time that happened was July 19th versus the Twins when they lost 6-3. That 40-game streak was the 6th longest in Major League Baseball history and the longest since the 1999 Diamondbacks. Wow. Tough one. Yeah, tough one. They hadn't lost that series since, I believe it was mid-August. I believe it was against the Twins. Try to see if I can find that here. But yeah, it snapped that streak, which was unfortunate. Our player of the game, pinch hitter Yes. Well, designated hitter Dominic Canzone. Canzone, 2 hits, 1 run, and 2 RBIs. No, Canzone pinch hit the game before. Pardon me. Designated hitter Dominic Canzone, 2 hits, 1 run, and 2 RBIs, including a 2-run homer. All of the Mariners' offense would come between Canzone and then Mike Ford. Mike Ford hit a home run right after Canzone to make it back-to-back, but the Mariners didn't do anything else outside of that, unfortunately. Our player of the week goes to, kind of not surprised if you heard me say his name a few times, shortstop J.P. Crawford. J.P., over the last 7 days, 6 hits, 4 runs, 4 RBIs, 4 walks, 1 stolen base, a 333 batting average, a 478 on-base percentage, a 722 slugging percentage, which is big for JP, wow, and a 1.200 OPS. JP continues to be incredibly valuable for this Mariners team, and as it's been said, we've said it in our recaps and our coverage, and it's been said on social media. While Julio has been a big part of the second half surge for this team, JP Crawford has been that valuable for the Mariners over the entirety of this 2023 season. So you have to put some notice on JP there. Again, I remember when people wanted to either have JP move to second base to bring in one of the big name shortstops in free agency, or they just wanted JP traded flat out, which is silly, stupid, ignorant. Insert your word here. Other piece of injury related news last night in the game against pardon me. In game 2 of that Mets series, Ty France was hit in his back elbow by a pitch. He would leave that game. X-rays were negative, which is big because we know Ty's been hit a few times before. He did have distinct ball marks. I have a baseball. 1 second. We'll get that baseball. I do have baseball. Distinctive C marks on his elbow. If the light. Yeah, C marks. So obviously there would be C marks on his elbow back there. But he is in the lineup for today's game against the Reds as the Mariners continue their road trip, which is good to see. But just, man, can't really afford to lose any of your key guys right now. You've got some depth, but yeah, just really would not want to lose a contributor like that. So I don't know. It's tough. This past 6 games, you would have really loved to have swept the Athletics, one, to continue to keep pace and build some separation at the top of the AL West. And because of just how poor the Mets have been out, well, that could be used in a couple terms, through the course of the season. In the Mets series, they've got some talent. I mean, Pete Alonso hit 2 homers in that 3rd game of the series. Ronnie Mauricio got called up and he made an impact. And then the Mariners offense just kind of relatively struggled outside of that 2nd game of the series. So, and that's the thing. Scott Service has talked about this throughout the course of the year, is making, being smarter at the plate, getting the starting pitcher out of the game. That doesn't mean a bunch of homers. It can mean fouling off pitches, running the pitch count up, taking walks, making smarter swing decisions. You didn't really see that in games 1 and 3 of this series, which is unfortunate. So we'd like to get back to that. And kind of figure things out, because you can't really play that kind of baseball that you played in game 1 and for most of game 3 of that Mets series. You got to be better. You got to turn that around. So, team made some roster moves. September call-ups are happening. The roster sizes have expanded by one pitcher and a catcher. Um, hmm. Sorry, I wanted to get that off. My dad texted me. On August 31st, the day before the rosters expanded, the team added right-handed pitcher Dominic Leone off of waivers from the Angels. If you don't remember, Leone was a part of the Mariners. I believe it was 2014 and 15. Didn't work out. He was with the Angels most recently. The Mariners acquired him off of waivers as a corresponding move to make room on the 40-man. The team designated Devin Sweet for assignment. Sweet was picked up off of waivers from the Athletics. Unfortunately, I wanted to talk to Devin, but that's tough. That's tough. So Devin Sweet gets a new opportunity with Oakland, and the September call-ups. It was originally going to be Adam Aller. Aller was in the clubhouse with the Mariners on their getaway in the post game from their win on Wednesday against the Athletics. It was going to be on the plane with them, but then they acquired Leone off of waivers. So it was Leone was the pitcher call-up, and then outfielder Sam Haggerty was recalled from AAA Tacoma. So makes sense. I mean, there's been call to bring up Jake Shiner from the Rainiers, and I mean, he has been hitting well down there with Tacoma, but they opt for Haggerty. Is extremely versatile, and they know he's been able to contribute at the big league level, so it makes sense. I understand it, but I know some people might have wanted them to go somewhere else. Continuing with team-related news, on September 3rd, 2 players for the Mariners earned respective Player of the Month honors. Center fielder Julio Rodriguez, a no-brainer, was named the AL Player of the Month. Julio is the first player on the Mariners to win the award since Nelson Cruz back in April of 2015, and the youngest since Alex Rodriguez did so back in August of 1996. Julio in the month of August batted .429 with 19 runs, 10 doubles, 7 homers, 30 RBIs, 8 walks, 11 stolen bases across the 23 games that he played. He had 13 multi-hit games and hit safely in 20 of the 23 games that he played in. He led the American League in batting average, hits, doubles, RBIs, stolen bases, on base percentage, slugging, total bases, and F4. He had a 2.4 F4 in the month of August, which if you at the end of the year, when you look at some of the players across the league, that's more than some players will have over the course of the entire season that they played, which is pretty wild. In addition to Julio winning Player of the Month, relief pitcher Andres Munoz was named the AL reliever of the month, leading the American League with 9 saves in the month of August. He had a 1-1 record, a 1.93 ERA, 7 walks, 20 strikeouts across the 14 appearances that he made during the month. He did not allow a homer, and he joins Edwin Diaz as the only Mariners in franchise history to win the award since it became a thing back in 2017. So the Mariners currently sit at a 77-win, 59-loss record. They are first in the American League West at this current point in time. Texas and Houston still very much are right behind them. They start a 3-game series in Cincinnati against a young and talented Reds team, actually just a little bit before before this episode goes live. Yes. So by the time this episode goes live, that game is most likely done. Excuse me. Starting the series, yes, September 4th at the Cincinnati Reds, 1:10 p.m. start. And then both the 5th and the 6th at the Reds are 3:40 p.m. starts as the Mariners take on a young, talented team. There's a lot of young talent, including some former Mariners, former players from the organization. Jake Fraley is leading off for the Reds today, and Noelvi Marte, who previously made his big league debut just, I believe it was a few weeks ago with the Reds, is starting at third base for Cincinnati. After that Red series, the Mariners will finish out their 10-game road trip on the road against one of the best teams in the American League when they take on the Tampa Bay Rays down in Florida. Both the 7th and the 8th to start out this series against Tampa Bay are at 3:40 p.m. First pitch times. September 9th at the Rays is a 1:05 p.m. first pitch, and then September 10th at the Rays is a 10:10 a.m. start. That's going to be a tough series. I mean, this one, the Cincinnati one, obviously that Mets one was tougher than maybe some thought would be. Um, and then, yeah, this Rays series is not going to be an easy one whatsoever. Obviously, if you remember the way that the Mariners began their series against the Rays at home earlier in the year, well, it was not good. The Mariners got blown out. So I'm going to work on that. We head over here to our Storm, who, man, it's crazy that the Storm season will end this upcoming week. We'll have exit interviews the day after the final game of the season. So, yeah, that's going to be, I can't believe that. Wow. Annie, who's it? Yeah, sorry, just kind of hard to fathom. The Storm continued their final road trip of the season. It's a 4-game road trip with an August 31st win over the Los Angeles Sparks. Los Angeles, while at this current point, as of today, they are in a playoff spot. This win over the Sparks from the Storm actually knocked Los Angeles out of their playoff spot. The Storm would win this one 72-61. I played the game guard Jewel Lloyd. 25 points, wasn't the most efficient shooting the basketball, but contributed big outside of that. 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block on the day. Big there for the Storm to get that performance. As I mentioned, that Storm win actually knocked the Sparks out of their playoff spot at the time. It was a big win for Seattle. This one, the next game they played, not so much. September 2nd at the Las Vegas Aces, a 77-103 loss. The Storm mostly hung around in this game through the first 3 quarters. It was within reach as the fourth quarter began, but Las Vegas was able to go on a torrid run and stomped out any hope for Seattle beating Las Vegas this year. Would not happen. Played the game once again. Guard Jewel Lloyd, 28 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1 steal. So as we've kind of gone away with having a player of the week because it's mostly been Jewel Lloyd, it was nice to get that Sparks win. It'll be interesting to see, though, how these remaining 3 games of the season go. Because of how bad Indiana and is it Indiana? I want to make sure I get this right. Because of how bad, I know it's at least Phoenix. How bad Phoenix? Oh yes. Let me double check this. Phoenix and Indiana have been. It is likely that the Storm will end up with the third, technically worse, but third best lottery odds for the top pick in the WNBA draft this upcoming year. It doesn't mean that they're fully out of having the potential of that top pick. It just means that the odds aren't as great. Would love to have that top pick. But essentially, something to watch is the Chicago Sky. We would like for the Chicago Sky to not make the playoffs and the Sparks to actually make the playoffs so that the Storm could have those third best odds for that top pick. So something to watch. But, I talked about it again at the beginning of the year, heading into the season, and then throughout the course of the year, really looking to see some of these younger players develop. Jordan Horston, her versatility, defensively and offensively. Dulcie Fankam-Menjadu, while Mercedes Russell is getting more overall minutes, Dulcie is still a big contributor as a starter on the boards for a Seattle team that has struggled on the boards for a large part of the last 2 seasons. Jade Melvin is getting more minutes over the course of the past 2, of the second half, really, since Gabby Williams and Ivana Dojkic both went out in their own respective ways, and they're both different ways. So those are things I'll watch as we finish out the regular season here. So injury report for those games against the Sparks and Aces. Again, it's just Gabby Williams. Everyone else has been good to go. The Storm sit at an 11-win, 26-loss record, 11th in all of the WNBA, 5th best in the Western Conference, which isn't, I say best, but they're second to last in the entire conference. Looking ahead, their first game of this week is September 6th at the Atlanta Dream. That's a 4 p.m. Pacific time tip-off. Nationally, that game will be on NBA TV. If you are here in the state of Washington, though, I will watch it on Amazon Prime Video. Next matchup, September 8th at the Dallas Wings, is a 5 p.m. Pacific time tip-off. That game is on Ion. Yes, Ion. And then to close out the WNBA regular season, the 2023 season, the Storm will host the potentially playoff-bound LA Sparks when these two teams meet on September 10th here at home at Climate Pledge Arena with a noon tip-off, 12 p.m. Pacific time. That is on ESPN 3. So it'll be tough. Exit interviews are the very next day, so it'll be very interesting to see. Yeah, obviously the biggest headline and before anything else this offseason will be Jewel Lloyd's decision. So move over to our Sounders now. This could have been a very good week for the Sounders as they look to go ahead and lock up their playoff spot and hopefully a potentially top seed in all of the Western Conference. And I'd still say it's a positive week for the Sounders, but not as positive potentially as they would have liked. We'll get into reason for that now as we go into our Sounders here. Their first game of the past week was August 30th at Austin FC, a 2-1 win for Seattle. Our player of the match, midfielder Nico Ladero, a 7.9 match rating. 7.9 match rating, 1 assist, and 79% passing, 1 big chance created, and 3 shots. Seattle got the first goal of this game in the second half, 3 minutes in at the 48th minute. Jordan Morris had a right-footed shot from the right side of the box, assisted by Nico Ladero off of a set piece, which is big because I know we talked about it recently. I think we talked about it at the end of last year as well. The Sounders have not been good in set piece situations really for a while, but they're able to get that there. JMO get back on the scoreboard. There was some controversy because there was a goal that probably should have been allowed for Austin FC that did not get reviewed. Or if it did, they didn't use the right camera angles. I will not speak on that because I'm just happy for the win now, and there's nothing you can do about it now. And Austin, it's not like Austin's going anywhere anyway. It's not like it impacts their playoff race. But Austin would get their goal in the 72nd minute. Unfortunate here off of a corner. Really tough. You think, they're going to split points. But in the 90th minute, Albert Rusnak scores a right-footed shot from the center of the box and is able to get the winner here. The Sounders get the 3 points. They beat Austin on the road. And it was big. I mean, it was big to get that. Again, Austin is just sitting. Well, I lied. Austin is actually just outside of the playoff bubble. I lied to you. I apologize. But we're a Sounders account here. We're focusing on the Sounders. September 2nd, one of the bigger instances of this rivalry, just considering playoff implications. Cascadia matchup. Going into this match, if these teams did draw, it would mean that the Vancouver Whitecaps would win the Cascadia Cup. And you can see what happened on your screen. A 2-2 draw. Our player of the match forward, Raul Ruidiaz, the Peruvian goal machine, 1 goal, 1 assist, an 89% passing percentage, 1 big chance created, and 3 shots. The Sounders got a goal in the 9th minute from Raul, which was really big there to have. That actually came off of a corner, which was nice. Jackson Reagan got the assist as he headed the ball first, and then it found Raul wide open. And then the Sounders would get a goal in the 30th minute from Leo True, who intercepted a pass in his own half. It was a really weird one. You should really go and watch the highlights from it. He sprinted down the field, had a breakaway, scored. He did take his jersey off, which was a yellow card. Now, we'll talk about that in a minute. In the 53rd minute, second half, Leo Chu got a second yellow card, which was a really, really, really soft call. Chu was actually going to get squished by a Timbers defender, and they called the yellow on him. Didn't make a lot of sense, but it sent him off and left Seattle with only 10 men, not 2 men. That's impossible. Only 10 men. Now, this wasn't really too much of an issue initially, but the big thing was the Timbers were able to score 2 goals within a 3-minute span, and it left the game in a draw. And everybody felt like Nuhu in this photo, our photo of the match by Matthew Bermudez, just kind of holding your head in your hands and figuring what in the world just happened. Now, everybody had to things up in arms, whether it was Chu made a dumb mistake taking his jersey off. The refs decided this game. I disagree with both of those things. And it's fine to have your opinion. If you're going to attack me in the comments for it, just remember you're being dog. Anyway, sure. Leo Chu is going to learn from the mistake that he made by taking his jersey off, which is an automatic yellow card. Sure. He was excited. I get it. I get that was a mistake. The second yellow card never should have been called. It was a silly and a soft foul. Soft foul. But to say that the entirety of this result was on Leo Chu is silly, and you shouldn't just be looking for someone to blame. Horrible thinking. And to also blame the refs entirely for this decision is silly, because if you go and look at the match and the goals from Portland, they were both left entirely wide open, the players for Portland. On the first one, back post, knew who was the closest player running out to get him. He was more central focused in the box, which shouldn't have happened. But Portland player wide open, easy. Second goal, Evander was coming down the field as Portland was getting a counter, left wide open, way too much space. It was a great goal, that second one that they scored, top right, strong shot and everything, but it was given way too much space, so blame Seattle's defensive lapses. It's a team game. You cannot blame solely Leo Chu for this. That's silly. That's irrational thinking. It's not complete thinking. It is a team game. And you can't blame Leo Chu for leaving those players entirely wide open. So, in injury-related news, midfielder Christian Roldan had extensive tests done in Detroit as he continues to try to get back from a concussion, including sleep tests. It's unclear whether he'll be back. Schmetzer is hopeful that he can come back this season, but that's not anything sort of clear. In other news, team-related notes, on September 1st, goalkeeper Andrew Thomas was loaned to New Mexico United of the USL Championship League. Thomas had largely been the Sounders' third goalkeeper, so it makes sense that they want to get him some wait time, some playing time, some minutes, since it's largely the two Stephs that are going to get the 1 and the 2 spot for the Sounders, and Stephen Fry and Stephen Cleveland. So the Sounders sit in an 11-win, 9-loss, 8-draw record at 41 points currently in the Western Conference. Because Inter Miami did beat LAFC, the Sounders sit at second in the Western Conference right now, behind St. Louis City. St. Louis City has 47 points as the top. The Sounders have 41 as the second team. LAFC has 40, and so does Real Salt Lake. Now, the interesting thing, the big thing that everyone's talking about with this Western Conference is that the Sounders have played the most matches in the Western Conference at 28. St. Louis has only played 27. LAFC has played 26. And Real Salt Lake has played 27. So, and Houston can jump over them with 3 points, as they sit at 39. And they've only played 27. So the matches in hand are big. That's why it was so important for the Sounders to get more points and not drop points, whether it be a draw or a win. Because now it's not really up to you solely what happens the rest of the way in the Western Conference. You don't control your full destiny. You can certainly improve it by winning more, which you didn't do against Portland here. But you're going to need some help if you want one of those higher seats. You're going to ideally need some help. So anyway, and in the league, they sit at 8th. Supporter Shield is fully out of the question here. We move over here to Kraken related news, which isn't something we've had in quite some time. Just kind of some depth signings here. The team signed Devon Shore on a 1-year, 2-way contract at $775,000 AAV. Shore, a 29-year-old, had 9 points, 1 goal, and 8 assists across 47 games for the Oilers during the 2022-23 season. He finished the season with a 50.9% face-off win percentage, going 89 for 175 at the dot. It marked the second best win percentage of his career and ranked 6th on Edmonton's roster. According to Natural Stat Trick, Shore owned the second best on-ice goals for percentage at 65%. on the Oilers roster in 2022-23, with Edmonton outscoring their opponents 13-7 during 5-on-5 play when he was on the ice. The forward also appeared in 5 regular season games for the Bakersfield Condors of the AHL during this past season, totaling 5 points, 2 goals, and 3 assists across those games. So Shore joins an already log-jammed offensive attack for the Kraken here. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out for Seattle, who's going to end up going down to the Coachella Valley Firebirds of the AHL. In addition to Shore, though, the team made another signing. The team signed defenseman Mitch Reinke on a 1-year, 2-way contract at $775 AAV, $775,000 AAV. Reinke, 27 years old, totaled 27 points on 1 goal and 26 assists in 52 regular season games for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins of the AHL affiliate of the Pittsburgh Penguins. His 27 points were tied for the second most of his AHL career and set a career high in points per game at 0.52. He finished this 2022-23 season leading Wilkes-Barre Scranton defensemen in scoring and ranked 3rd amongst Penguin skaters in assists, despite missing those final 12 games of the regular season with an injury. Again, these are more than likely just depth signings, guys who will, since they're 2-way contracts, especially go down to Coachella Valley to help fill out that AHL roster for the Firebirds. But you never know. I mean, training camp hasn't been played yet, roster hasn't been decided, and it's good depth. I mean, obviously the Kraken had to bring up guys from the AHL throughout the course of the season because of injuries and such. You'd like to not have to account for injuries, but that's just not how life works. You guys saw different guys get called up, so it'll be interesting to see if these guys push anybody. Competition breeds excellence. But yeah, largely 2 depth signings for the Kraken here. And again, depth is always important. Depth is big to have across the NHL in any sort of facet, across any sports league. So we go over here to our OL Reign, who got back into regular season action and hosted their fan appreciation match and their welcome back match, as they really sort of put a big emphasis on welcoming back their players from the World Cup. September 3rd versus the Orlando Pride, a 1-0 win. This one was really wild, as Orlando suffered a red card to their goalkeeper, Anna Morehouse, and I believe it was the 3rd minute. I'll get this correct here. Let me get this correct. I don't want to give you the wrong information. So Morehouse, red card in the 3rd minute. Bethany Balser hitting down the field. Morehouse was the last line of defense. Got a red card. The Pride had to put in a new goalkeeper, so it wasn't Morehouse anymore. It would be Carly Nelson. Nelson actually did a pretty solid job in net for the Pride. And in the 10th minute, Bethany Balser had to come out of this match. Unfortunately, she took kind of a bump when Morehouse took her out and just couldn't keep going. She did limp to the locker room. Head coach Laura Harvey was not sure about her status and what that looks like. So we're still waiting to hear if there's going to be any sort of update on that. But there were pictures of the club heading out to training today. See if we can see Bethany. No sign of Bethany. Okay, so unsure currently. With it being a Challenge Cup match, I know it is the playoff semifinal upcoming. Maybe they just say, hey, we are going to go ahead and just keep you out. But anyway, just Fishlock also left this match with what some people might have thought was an injury, but Laura Harvey said she was fine as well. The Reign would get the only goal of the match, and it was the one they needed to get these 3 points from Jordan Heitema, who came in as a sub for Bethany Balser. Heitema scored in the second half in the 49th minute, a right-footed shot from the center of the box amongst a bunch of chaos. Carly Nelson and the Orlando Pride back line did a great job of holding things down. But all in all, it would be Heitema who would put it away after it bounced out to her. The Reign had a good amount of challenges in this match and likely should have had more than one goal. And didn't seem that Laura Harvey was happy that they didn't have more than the one goal. But they would come out with the win the 3 points is important. That is what Harvey did end up talking about in this one. The Reign only had 2 big chances in this match, 2 big chances. They committed more fouls than Orlando, which didn't really help, and they had more offsides. So they outshot Orlando in a big way. The Reign had 18 shots. The Pride only had 4, and 7 of those shots were on target. So, yeah, it could have been much better. Could have been much better there. Tough to see that, but they got the win again, which is what was important. We go to our 2 photos of the match here. First one by Liv Lions. As you can see here, Jordan Heidema running to celebrate that goal. Just Fishlock pointing, Rose Lavelle running, Megan Rapinoe celebrating. Orlando defender Kylie Strom kind of like, what in the world just happened? And then our second photo of the game here by photographer Rio Giancarlo, Heidema celebrating with defenders Phoebe McLernan and Lou Barnes, that goal that she scored. So the injury report was clean versus Orlando, which is good to see. We've talked about it the last few years with the Reign, the sort of struggles to score more. They generate a lot of chances. They don't necessarily bury them all. And it's something you'd like to get figured out, especially as the Reign look to secure a playoff spot. And like I talk about with the Sounders and figuring things out, the table in the NWSL isn't really clear either. So the San Diego Waves sit at the top right now with 30 points. The Portland Thorns are in second with 29 points. North Carolina, the Courage are at 28 in third. The Reign sit at fourth with 27 points. They're just above Gotham, who have also 27. And then the last playoff spot, the 6th overall seed, is the Washington Spirit, who have 26. So your entirety of the playoffs is separated by 4 points. 4 points, which is yeah. There are a couple teams that are looking in. Angel City and Racing Louisville both are looking in with 24 points of their own. So things, and everybody is at 18 matches played. So you don't have to worry about, like what the Sounders do, games in hand. So it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for the Reign to close this thing out. You're going to need to get the 3 points. And they did so today. So the Reign have, after their next match, which is a Challenge Cup match, and they could have another one potentially, depending on if they win that one. But they've got 4 matches left in the regular season. 3 of them are against teams that are currently in playoff spots. They've got Portland on the 16th in Portland. They've got North Carolina on the 1st of October. And then they've got the Spirit on the 6th of October. Those 2 matches, the 1st and the 6th, against North Carolina and Washington, are both at home, which should ideally help you, but we'll see. And then the final match of the regular season is on the road against Chicago, and Chicago is out of the playoff chase. They're second worst in the league, points-wise. So it's in your hands. It is arguably in your hands to see where you're going to land in terms of seeding. You're largely healthy. We're going to wait to hear about Bethany Balser, hoping that is okay. That she doesn't have a serious injury. But it's largely in your hands, unlike with the Sounders. So ideally, you will figure things out. But easier said than done. You got the 3 points this week. We move on. We go on. So the Reign record now sits at 8 wins, 7 losses, and 3 draws on the year. They are 4th in the league table, as I mentioned, with 27 points. Their next match is a Challenge Cup match. It's the the NWSL Challenge Cup semifinal. It will be played on CBS Sports September 6th here at Lumen Field versus Racing Louisville at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Head coach Laura Harvey said that of the players who played 90 minutes in the win over Orlando, do not expect them to play 90 minutes against Racing Louisville, which makes a ton of sense. You don't want to gas these players out. And you've got depth. Laura Harvey has talked all year about the depth that this club has, and I would heavily expect them to take advantage of that when these 2 teams meet on Wednesday. So this is a perfect segue over here to our star of the week. I know we didn't have one last week. I apologize. I was very tired. I went with Jordan Heidema of our Reign in this photo here by Rio Giancarlo, to step in and be a sub much earlier than she likely anticipated in the 10th minute, to have Jordan Heidema come in and be able to contribute and score the lone goal. Obviously, if you are if you go back and look at the highlights of this match and see the goal that she scored, it's kind of like, hey, you kind of had to bury that. But that's not always a certainty. So for her to go and take care of business and be a factor in this one is big, and she's still, after coming over to the Reign this past year, Harvey talked about consistency. Heineman's still looking, to be consistent up top and be that scoring threat. But you could argue a lot of the tech is still trying to find that sort of steady ground and be able to bury goals at a consistent rate. But for the goal that she had and the implication that it had in the win to get those 3 points as the Reign chase one of their top spots, Jordan Heidema is my pick. And it's great to have that sort of depth. You can go, oh, we've got Jordan Heidema on the bench of all places. And you still got, your forward group of Bethany, Megan, Heidema, Ziara King, Elise Bennett, Veronica Latsko. Like, that is an incredibly, incredibly deep forward group. So anyway, that'll wrap us up as we are here in the month of September. I'm going to thank you for sticking with us. We will be back in studio next week. As we get over here, it'll be interesting because Monday is also exit interviews day. So we will work on that and getting that all sorted out. So until we see you next week on September 11th, if I'm doing the days right. It is. Until we see you next week, take care of yourselves. Be well. I love you. You are always valued. Hope that our Seattle teams keep things up, but remember, it is important to look out for others. It is important to have fun with these sports teams. I know that a lot of the times we look at the losses and it's really tough, but these are players too. They do hear your comments. They do see your comments. Until we see you next week, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.